So it looks like more details from former Danity Kane star Dawn Richard's lawsuit are coming out, and she's naming names including R&B singers Usher and NeYo being witnesses to Diddy's violent behavior towards his then girlfriend, Cassie. Welcome back to the Kempire channel, your number one source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. So Dawn Richard, we did in a separate video, filed a lawsuit accusing Diddy of a lot of things, not only abuses to other people, but abuses to her while she worked for him as a part of Danity Kane and Diddy Dirty Money. A lot of you have been, like per usual, attacking the victims. Did we not learn anything from what we saw in Cassie's lawsuit and then subsequently what we saw in that video footage of Diddy harming Cassie at the then Intercontinental Hotel? Maybe you forgot. But a lot of people have things to say about why now? Why didn't you do anything then? Are we not forgetting the power that this man yields, the things that he's been accused of, and he's still walking free? That should tell you a lot. Well, this 55-page lawsuit that Dawn Richard filed on Tuesday has a lot in it, and we haven't even gotten a chance to go through every page, but I will in our podcast, so be sure to subscribe to the Kempire podcast. But I wanted to talk about a part that she mentions in this lawsuit. So I'm going to read this directly from the lawsuit when Dawn, and this is part of the reason why some people ask, why now? Why didn't she file this a lot sooner, right after Cassie? Because when you file a lawsuit, you have to gather information. You have to make sure that you have all of the information that you want to present your case. And she is presenting a very interesting and very believable one. So this was on, let me just see if I can get the page here. This is on page 15 of her lawsuit. You're welcome for those that are watching this that want to go read the lawsuit or use it for their own content. So under Interscope Records enabled Mr. Combs' gender-motivated violence. So Dawn says in her lawsuit, in or around late 2009 or early 2010, Bad Boy Entertainment entered an agreement with Interscope, Geffen, A&M Records. Upon information and belief, Bad Boy was paid $50 million in exchange for Bad Boy's future releases being distributed through Interscope. In so doing, Mr. Combs intended to capitalize on Interscope's significant resources and enhance the promotion and sales of Bad Boy's releases, including Diddy Dirty Money's upcoming album. So in the weeks and months leading up to the Bad Boy Interscope deal, Mr. Combs had frequent meetings with producer and then CEO of Interscope Records, Jimmy Iovine. On one such occasion, Combs hosted a dinner at a West Hollywood, California restaurant, which Miss Richard and Miss Harper, Kalena Harper, who was also part of Diddy Dirty Money, were required to attend. Among the guests at the dinner were celebrities like NeYo and Usher, as well as Mr. Iovine. At the dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura, Cassie, had an argument. In front of the dinner guests, Mr. Combs hissed at Miss Ventura in a screaming whisper and forcibly punched her in the stomach, causing her to double over in visible pain. Crying, Miss Clark escorted Miss Ventura out of the restaurant, and Mr. Combs remained and continued socializing with the dinner guests. At this point, Interscope Records clearly had actual knowledge that Combs was dangerous around females and that Combs was willing to brazenly batter a female in public. It also tells you that this man has gotten away with, according to multiple stories and video footage, has gotten away with this level of abuse on many different people, male or female, and has not reaped any sort of consequences. Even after Mr. Iovine watched Mr. Combs commit violent assault in front of numerous high-profile witnesses, the Bad Boy Interscope deal took place and remained in effect. providing Mr. Combs with immense financial rewards and enabling him to commit further acts of violence without fear of repercussions. What she's playing out here is exactly what we saw in Cassie's lawsuit and why Cassie named all of these other record executives and businesses that were associated or owned by Diddy. Dawn also says in her lawsuit, watching Mr. Combs openly assault Miss Ventura in front of Mr. Iovine and various celebrities, and observing that other powerful music industry representatives were complicit in Mr. Combs' behavior, amplified Ms. Richard's fears that Mr. Combs could one day harm her and that his actions would be accepted and normalized by everyone surrounding him. We have to remember, she's an employee. We've talked about this for those that have been here on the channel a long time. I've worked in human resources. Some of you have worked in human resources, and we've talked about this. Just because you aren't the subject of someone's inappropriate behavior or harmful behavior, the people around you, especially in a work environment, I know it's entertainment, it's still a work environment, you could have a case as well. Because you are now in fear of, whoa, that could be me, or whoa, I just witnessed something that has been traumatic for me or is triggering to me. They continue, they says, as a part of the agreement between Bad Boy and Interscope heavily promoted Diddy Dirty Money's Last Train to Paris album. Mr. Iovine had represented Mr. Combs with a demo of Coming Home for him to produce, a song that would become a multi-platinum hit. Mr. Iovine was encouraging Mr. Combs to develop a new sound for the album into which Interscope was investing significant resources. Miss Richard, Miss Harper, and Miss Ventura all provided vocal performances for this project. Released in November of 2010, the album Last Train to Paris became Diddy Dirty Money's most commercially successful project, providing vast financial rewards to both Interscope and Mr. Combs. Notice how she said not to herself or to Kalena, who also recently supported Diddy openly. They said in or around fall of 2009, and they put under this Diddy Dirty Money, Mr. Combs subjects Miss Richard to labor trafficking and oppressive working conditions. In or around fall of 2009, Diddy Dirty Money began recording the song Love Comes Down. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs continued to use drugs that caused him to remain awake for prolonged periods of time. When he was awake, he would demand that Miss Richard and Miss Harper record in the studio, where they would spend 3 to 4 consecutive days recording without a break to sleep or eat. Mr. Combs required Miss Richard and Miss Harper to remain at his homes, continuously denying the opportunity to return to their hotel rooms for breaks. The degree of control Mr. Combs exercised over Miss Richard's daily life and basic needs exasperated the significant power imbalance and threatening atmosphere that ensured Miss Richard's compliance with his demands. Sidebar. It always comes back to Sway in the morning, Sway Universe, because someone emailed me a clip from a throwback interview that Dawn did years ago, talking about working with Diddy and how they clash at one particular point.
I've seen Puff spaz out on people to the point where my heart jumped, like, you know, and I'm a grown ass man. It was like, damn, I'm glad I'm not on the other end of that. What's the worst time you ever seen him spaz out?
Yo, I'm about to air out our dirty laundry.
Okay.
So, yo, we were coming to rehearsal in New York. We were doing Saturday Night Live. Yeah. And Kalena and I didn't know we had rehearsals. And we were asking everybody, yo, when's rehearsals? They didn't know. We get to SIR Studios and Puff on us. He spazzes out on us. Like, and he was like, we all don't want it. He always go with the y'all don't want it, the Jedi mind treatment. He makes you believe that you suck all to hell. And then you've been working all hours of the night, and me and him got in a huge.
What did he say to you, like verbatim?
I can't even go into detail. He was like, y'all bitches don't want it. Y'all don't want it. And I was like, Puff, why you talking so loud? And I've kind of always, been respectful. I've never really went too out of line with Puff. I threw my purse down. I was like, well, you want to go, we can go. There was this chess battle that happened between him, and I think everybody's eyes was like, Dawn. Like, D-Rock was looking at me like, little bit, like, where you gonna go with that? And I think that was the first time Puff was like, yeah, I needed to maybe slow down on that moment. That was my first time both of us ever seen a side that I don't think we've ever saw with neither one of us.
Oh, that's Diddy, man.
Yo, that was
people have lost careers.
That was New Orleans meets New York that day.
You don't want to find yourself in that dark, lonely place.
He says it consistently.
That's one of his famous quotes.
Right.
Wow, man, you survived that.
I survived it.
And I thought that was quite telling. Yes, I know people will probably try to use that against Dawn and say like, "Oh, Dawn, you were just working with him," and da 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 da. You have to remember the power dynamics, and then sometimes when another victim comes out, other victims are like, "Oh, what I was in wasn't what the industry is about. Isn't okay. I didn't realize that I was in that." I need people to start to understand, or at least because of these recent stories and allegations against many powerful people, understand the mentality of what happens when you have been traumatized. A lot of times people don't realize that the situations that they were in were abusive. She says, Mr. Combs regularly left the studio and required Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper to stay and write verses to songs. Occasionally, Ms. Richard tried to leave to get something to eat or go to her hotel. And I know some of you old heads, me included, think, oh, that was the 90s. That was the 2000s. Remember we watched Making of the Band. That's what you do. No, just because there's entertainment doesn't mean that it's legal. You're still required to follow the mandates that are in place for a work environment. They said occasionally Ms. Richard tried to leave to get something to eat or go to her hotel. Whenever Ms. Richard tried to leave, Mr. Combs would call and demand, "Where the F are you? And we have an album to make." Mr. Combs frequently made threats, especially if they asked for food or rest, stating, "You're a B word. I don't want to see your effing face. I make N-words go missing," which we reported yesterday, "and I make things go away." Each time Ms. Richard returned to the studio, immediately believing Mr. Combs was capable of following through with his threats. Mr. Combs criticized Ms. Richard for being too skinny, yet denied her requests for food and demanded that she drink only peanut butter shakes. Mr. Combs had full meals prepared by a chef and ate them in front of Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper, never offering them food. I will say, if you go back to the days of Diddy Dirty Money, it did feel like he had these two women. It was a different concept idea, but you felt the power imbalance, especially because it was sort of like, okay, this big media mogul, we knew him as an artist, but now he's formed this group. It felt like Diddy he felt like a pimp, basically. And these were his backup singers. It didn't feel like it was an equal situation. And we knew it wasn't an equal situation because we knew that he was the owner of the label. We knew that this was his concept. Fine. According to the lawsuit, Dawn says Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper begged for food and rest breaks, but Mr. Combs refused, making statements such as absolutely effing not, and this is what it takes to be great. Mr. Combs' responses underscored the threat he posed and heightened Ms. Richard's concerns for her safety and well-being. As Ms. Richard continued to work nonstop, transitioning between the studio, rehearsals, workouts, and back to the studio, she became severely dehydrated and experienced chronic stomach cramping from being undernourished and excessively thin. On the numerous occasions that she told Mr. Combs that she was not feeling well, he called her lazy and dismissed her health concerns, instilling in her further apprehension of communicating her needs. And if you remember Making of the Band, and you remember this time, because I know it's a long time ago, when you look at the dates, when Danity Kane fell apart, we already knew. Dawn Richard has always been passionate about it. She was probably one of the most passionate people in that group, and she wanted to succeed no matter what. And after the group broke up, she wanted to have any other opportunity to make it in this business, and if that meant working with Diddy, she was going to do it. And it becomes this cycle. She was like, well, maybe this is what it does take. Look, he has all this power, all this fame, and he's huge, and he's made stars of everyone else. She's fallen to the belief, like, maybe this is what it takes. Everyone else is doing it. He's hurting Cassie in front of an entire restaurant and notable people who also seem to have power as well. Maybe this is what it takes. I'm just trying to get you into the mind of victims. I'm not an expert in this, but I'm gaining a better understanding after doing so many different reports and reading and listening and gaining my own knowledge on this. You just have to remember, because I know so many people are in the comment section, and maybe because they have been victims to things like this and they have just sort of rationalized it like, woo, 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 fine, get over yourself. No. Because again, I remind you that this man who's been accused of many other things and recently just had a $100 million default judgment, which here's another update in regards to that. The update in regards to that, Diddy's legal team have filed an emergency request to have that default judgment dismissed. They want the whole lawsuit dismissed. They said, first of all, they never received this lawsuit. They found out about this lawsuit the same way that we did on social media. And he also said in that lawsuit that it's also past the statute of limitations by 17 years. Okay. I mean, they're still denying any guilt, but they're also saying that even if this was true, you're past the statute of limitations. Just another update in regards to that lawsuit. Back to Dawn Richard's lawsuit. So in or around summer of 2010, Ms. Richard experienced abdominal pain, swollen glands, and a fever. She was hospitalized and diagnosed with joint pain due to overuse, sprains, tendinitis, and infection, anemia, and a low white blood cell count. Ms. Richard presented Mr. Combs with her medical records specifying that she needed to emphasize eating well, being adequately hydrated, and getting adequate rest. But Mr. Combs ordered her to report to the studio the next day for another multi-day recording session. Mr. Combs' blatant disregard for her health and well-being cemented Ms. Richard's fear of his authority and control over her career and health. Ms. Richard continued to witness Mr. Combs' abuse towards Cassie. Ms. Ventura often wore sunglasses and makeup in an attempt to hide visible injuries. These incidents further solidified Ms. Richard's fear of Mr. Combs, as they were constant reminders of the physical dangers she potentially could and eventually would face. Mr. Combs often exhibited uncontrollable anger during recording sessions, throwing objects like albums, laptops, and food against the wall or at individuals. Mr. Combs frequently flew into frenzies and unpredictable rages. I think if we didn't see that video footage, well, look, did you watch Making of the Band? If you watch Making of the Band, like, none of this is that far-fetched. Miss Richard feared making any misstep that could direct his anger toward her. However, her fears went beyond her immediate physical safety. Because she had witnessed Mr. Combs' violent nature, a side of Mr. Combs that the world had not seen yet. She feared the falling out of Mr. Combs' good graces, or worse, standing up to him or speaking out against him, could result in serious harm to her. For those that keep saying, why is she speaking out now? Why didn't she defend Cassie then? Ms. Richard frequently thought about Mr. Combs' threat about making people, quote, go missing, and feared taking any action that could label her as a target. Despite Mr. Combs' violent threats and misogyny, Diddy Dirty Money experienced significant sales of records, selling 2 million copies of one single, 500,000 of another in the US, and in Australia, 5 million single copies. Ms. Richard's unpaid wages, this is important, and royalties are estimated at $1.2 million. These are important details because she's setting up why she felt the way that she felt, the working conditions that she worked under, and the money that she's owed. Okay, so this is already $1.2 million in unpaid wages. Let me remind you, even before these abuse allegations, Diddy has been accused of stealing from his artists, allegedly, I'll say. So she's saying that she is missing out on $1.2 million in unpaid royalties and wages. Ms. Richard's unpaid touring wages are estimated at $350,000 for touring dates within the United States alone. And he wasn't paying people? Like, guys, as I said to you guys, I promise this weekend I'm going to aim for the podcast exclusive, to read through this. If you enjoy listening to me, I'm going to read through all 55 pages and give you commentary. It's going to be story time with Kempire on the podcast. So be sure to subscribe so that we can unpack all of this together. All right. As always, let's continue this conversation on Diddy and the downfall of Diddy in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. Thanks for watching.
You bring the lighter, I got the fuse. You make a fire, I'll add the fuel. Follow my lead, just watch your shoes. Gotta turn the key.